Yes, there's quite a bit of information about this. Give me 1 second, and I will find.
Turn to Luke 3 in chapter 4, chapter 3, verse 4. Start reading.
All right.
Okay.
I was pretty sure that I had this in here in the list. Maybe I don't.
There's another passage that bears on that where I think Jesus says, the law and the prophets were until John. Since John, the kingdom of God has been preached, so I'm assuming what John said was God. The Christian side of the thing. We can go over that. I'll go over that one and some others.
I don't think I have it. Okay, you're gonna cover that. That's fine. I thought I had it in here as one of these questions, and if I don't, I'm going to add it to the. I'll add it to the list, and we can talk about it. But a lot of these have to do with public things that we do together. There was quite a bit that, in churches of Christ historically, up until World War II, the most common position in churches of Christ was that people did not join the military or police forces and were against all war. What you would generally call a pacifist position. That was the most common position taken in churches of Christ by most preachers and elders and so forth. World War II, World War I to some degree, but World War II changed that. And after we were attacked, then it just didn't take that long, and so many people joined the military for that view to flip. And now it's a minority view in churches of Christ, as in most Protestant denominations, to say that a person can't be a policeman or a member of the military. That's a minority view. But there you can find a lot of information, a lot of discussion about this early in the 20th century in churches of Christ and other religions too. But that view is flipped because of societal, cultural changes, one way or the other. And of course, that doesn't mean it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that would be a common position before that time. And
Also, Bob, if you want to look up the story of Abner and Asahel, that's in the context of war. And basically, the story of Asahel is a brother to Joab. And after the battle is over, after the soldiers are all retreating, Asahel chases Abner, and Abner tells him, "Go back, I'm chasing you." But Asahel wanted to kill him. Asahel wanted to kill him, and he finally caught him, and Abner killed him. A little bit later, sometime later, Joab murders Abner, and David condemns it as murder. Outside of the battle, basically Abner was defending himself. Okay, and he was justified in killing Asahel. In the battle, nothing would happen. The Old Testament reflects exactly what I think John is telling us in the New Testament. In the battle, basically most of this is self-defense. You talk to those soldiers that were actually fighting, very few of them actually went out and with malice and forethought to try to kill the enemy. Some of them did. But a lot of it was self-defense. Many of the people that I talked to that actually been shot at, they were just trying to stay alive.
my impression in battle is everybody's in a mode of self-defense. But I've never been. Never been in battle, so I couldn't speak to that.
The U.S.
Now,
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to stay alive.
right. Now, personally, see, I'm the kind of person who, personally, I would be very hesitant to join the military where I knew I would have to kill somebody, because I don't want to do that. Would I, under certain circumstances? Yes, but I would be reluctant to do that, and I certainly wouldn't be gung-ho about it, okay? On the other hand, that's just me. On the other hand, if someone tried to harm my family, I would have zero problem killing them if I needed to. And I don't even think I'd feel bad about it. If I rightfully thought they were going to harm my wife and children and grandchildren, I would have zero problem killing them. Is that contradictory? You may think it is, but I'm just telling you. Now, can I justify either one of those positions in the Bible? Probably partly from what he just said. As a man, I believe to provide, if I can't protect my wife, how can I provide for her? It doesn't even make any sense to do that. So, on the other hand, the difference that for many people, I think this is where some of the objection comes from, Bob. The difference for many people is the spirit that's created in people, particularly men, of a desire to go where they can kill people, and there's a hostility or a resentment that's there that isn't healthy, and this is where you get the problems. Are most soldiers like that? No, I don't think so. Most policemen like that? I don't think so. But they got to be somebody who is not no problem doing that, or they shouldn't be a policeman. Yes, sir. Chad.
In Romans 13.
Romans 13.
Yes, because God refers to the authorities as his ministers.
Yeah, that says that the government is God's minister for justice or for vengeance, right? Well, that I don't know what the point you're making exactly, except that minister requires servants to carry out the justice. Sometimes that very well might be. He's not saying in that verse, no, you can't defend yourself. He's saying in that verse, you can't take revenge yourself. That's what that verse is saying. If someone kills my wife, I have no right to go seek them out and kill them. Now, there were times in the Bible when that was permitted. The family could seek out the murderer unless that murderer was in the city of refuge. That's no longer the case. So if someone hurts me or my family, I have no right to go take vengeance on them. That's the state's job to take vengeance. The problem arises in cultures like we have somewhat now, where the state doesn't take vengeance and then people take the vengeance themselves. But on the other hand, I don't think the question then becomes, that verse 2, Chad, does a Christian have a right to become an avenger for the state? And that's what Bob was as a policeman. He was an avenger of God's minister, the state, to carry out justice. So he was permitted, well, the question is, are the ministers of the state permitted to apprehend criminals and even to harm them if necessary, to bring them to justice? Well, I think Romans 13 says yes. Now, there's other conditions to that. Romans 13 says the state has the right to bring justice about, and they have an obligation to bring justice about. That's going to require people to do that, which puts them in unpleasant situations to carry out God's justice. What it doesn't allow in Romans 13 is for me to decide to go over here and catch a criminal and punish them myself. Doesn't allow that. Yes, sir.
Sometimes you put it in a position where it's either you or me.
Well, that's true whether you're a policeman or not sometimes, right?
But I'm not going to sit there and say, well, should I do this or should I not? You have less than a second to decide whether to take that life or not.
You ought to already made that decision before you become a policeman, whether you will make that decision or not, generally speaking. Now, everybody can exercise judgment, and you can always look back and justify something you did that was not right. But in principle, it's the job of the policeman or the soldier to execute justice. Now, we can argue what justice is, but that doesn't negate the question of executing justice as God's minister. The other question then, well, that may be true, you might say, Mike, but I don't think a Christian should put himself in a position of being a minister of justice. That's what the true pacifists would say among Christians in the 1800s and early 1900s. They would say, it's okay for the government to do this, but they would use the verse, let the dead bury the dead. You know, let the dead, the worldly people, take care of that kind of thing. Christians should not be burying the dead in that case, or should not be involved in that. That's the issue that you have to decide. Yes, sir.
And there's another scripture that came to mind. I don't know where exactly it's at. Where it says, Jesus says, "My kingdom is not from this world. Therefore, my disciples do not fight."
Yeah, my kingdom is not of this. I think that means they will not go to war, as it were, to advance the kingdom. My kingdom is not of this world. And yet, my point was, Jesus asked the disciples when he sent them out to preach. He said, do you have a sword among you? Because you're going to go into dangerous places, he's saying. I have to look up that reference. It's like Matthew 10. It might be later than that. And he said, do you have a sword? And they said, yes, we have 2 swords. He said, it's enough to go do what I want you. So I think that shows he was not saying, he was saying it's okay to defend yourself. Was he saying you should take the sword like Muhammad said and go out and conquer people? No. So anyway, that's a big issue, and I didn't want to get that involved in it right now, but here's the issue. Here's what comes with that. How many bells is that? Okay, real quickly. This issue has not divided churches like some other issues. Even though in any church, and here's my feeling. If you think that you should not do that, do not do it, and nobody should criticize you for not. If you want to take a position of I'm not going to be a soldier or a policeman, that's fine. No one should criticize you for that. On the other hand, I think it's permissible to do it under the right conditions. It hasn't divided churches because the church does have to take a position on that, whereas a lot of issues involve the worship, public participation, and you can't be a part of that church and not participate in those things. If we change the Lord's Supper to hamburger and Coke, that's going to be a divisive issue because you have to participate or not in that. If some members here decide they don't want to be a policeman, that doesn't affect all of you, and so it doesn't tend to divide churches. And probably shouldn't divide churches in that way.
Years ago, Mike, we had a state trooper that attended with us.
We had a state trooper that was what?
That would attend with us back when we were
Uh-huh.
in US 1. And he wouldn't bring his firearm in church. Okay? And I told him, I just assume you brought it into church. I don't want you leaving it out there in the car. Because, somebody can steal it, or we might need it in here if somebody decides to come in. That's up to him.
Those are individual things. Right. I got a friend of mine. He's down in Hollywood, and he was a policeman way back in Hollywood. And his wife objected to him carrying his gun in services because he was off duty, but he would always have it with him because he was, he was known as a policeman, and he thought he should have it with him. And she would always complain about that to him. He says, then one day, they had a guy come in the back, ranting and raving and waving his finger at the preacher, walking up the aisle screaming. He said the first thing that she did, reach over and pat my pocket to see if I had my gun. Says the first thing she did was tap my pants to see if I was armed. And he said, and everybody in the church looked at me. He said, if anybody is serious, they're looking at you, bang. That's what they would do. He says, I don't want anybody looking at me. Anyway, that's how it works in real life. We got to stop, but go ahead.
One thing I learned real quick, real life is far different from TV.
Right.
TV
Right.
can solve a problem in 20 minutes or do something in a few minutes, and then, whatever, it's far different.
What you have to watch out for fundamentally as a Christian about these things is it's one thing to carry out a duty, an unpleasant duty, and protect people and have a good heart. It's another thing to encourage in your own heart hostility, vengeance, violence, and basically encourage all that in your own heart. You're going to distort yourself, and you're going to be that's why, the military is not for all young men, because it'll turn a lot of them into violent people. It'll make them hostile. It'll make them hostile and savage and degrade them. So that's what you got to be careful of right there. All right, we got to stop. Thanks for talking. At 143, and we're on number 5. We're going to have a while. Be here a while. I don't think we're going to do all these, obviously, but